Hi everyone, Dakota again from becomingaprogrammer.com. We're continuing our series on building a Hacker News clone in AngularJS. In the last video, we ran npm install, and then we added a git ignore file to make sure that we're not tracking all of our node modules in version control. And we set up a local server and made a little test to make sure that Angular is working. Okay, so in this video, we're going to be bootstrapping our Angular app with UI router. So the first thing we were going to do is open up app.js, and then we're going to define an Angular module. To do that, we're going to go angular.module, and we'll call it app. And then we're going to inject UI.router as a dependency. Make sure you use a dot, not a dash. That got me before. Then we're going to pass a config function, and that function is going to take a state provider parameter, and that's an object that's connected with UI router that's going to allow us to interact with states and create them. So we're going to create a state using that state provider object, and then we're going to call it top because it's going to be our top stories state for the Hacker News clone. And then we're going to pass our configuration object to that top state, and the URL key is going to be set to an empty string so that we can hit localhost 8080 and see our top stories view. And then the template URL is going to be views/topstories.html, and we're about to create that file. And then thirdly, we're going to add a controller here. We'll call it the TopStoriesController, and we're going to use controller as syntax and call it as VM. So we can use the VM object, the view model object, to interact with the controller. Okay, so now we can save that file. And now we're going to add in these other files that we've referenced, the TopStoriesController and the TopStories view. So let's go touch.js app controllers, TopStoriesController.js. And now we're going to add the view, so touch views top-stories.html. Now we've got those files created. You can see them there and there. The first one we're going to open up is the TopStoriesController. And then I'm using John Papa's Angular Snippets. If you want to install them, you go Shift-Command-P, and then you type in install extensions, and then you can type in John Papa Angular 1, and then you'll see where to go. It's this one, Angular 1 JavaScript and TypeScript. It should get smaller as I type that. So it's this guy, and then you'll have just an install button, and you can click it and then refresh Visual Studio Code, and you'll have access to it. Okay, so after you've done that, you can type in the snippet here. It's ng1 and then controller. And you can hit tab to expand it, and then we're targeting our app module. We're going to go the TopStoriesController, and then here we are going to have a dependency, but we're not going to inject it yet because we haven't created it, and that would throw an error if we did. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm actually going to hit return here so I can get out of the snippet, because I also have to remove these this empty string, or that's also going to throw an error. So I want it to be an empty array for now. Okay, and then within the activate function here, I'm going to add an array. So I'm actually going to define a stories property on the view model object, and I'm going to set it equal to an array of 2 strings just to check out our wiring. Okay, now I'm going to save that file, and now I'm going to open up the views top stories, and I'm going to create a header here, and I'll just say here are the top stories. And then let's create an unordered list, and we're going to display those items from, I'm going to do command backslash here to split this so you can see the controller. I'm going to loop through that stories array using an ng repeat. So it's going to be a list item, and then I'm going to add the ngRepeat directive. I'm going to say for stories in vm.stories. And then inside of this ngRepeat, I'm just going to put out what story happens to be for each iteration of that ngRepeat loop. And finally, we need to make sure that we update our index.html file where everything's wired together. There are a few things we need to do. First, we need to add the app value to ng-app here, and that tells Angular to use this module we defined here that's called app. If this were named something else, we would want to put that name here to make sure that that module is the primary module that Angular is going to load. And now in here, we also want to add a Uiview directive that's associated with UI router. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell UI router where to put the information associated with the current state. So within app.js, if we're on the top state, then the URL should read just the root of the project, like localhost 8080 in our case. And then it should load this template and that controller. And this is where it's going to do it, in this view. So finally, there's one thing we for sure have to do or nothing's going to work. And that's we have to add a script tag down here. And that's going to tell our project to load the new controller that we wrote. Otherwise, we would get an error. So once we add that script tag there, we can reload this page in the browser, and you can say here, now here are the top stories, and we can see that our template is working properly. We're seeing this view being displayed at the base URL, and it's talking to our top stories controller. So we've got that working properly. Let's add these changes and commit them to version control. So git add dot, and then we're going to do git add, where it adds top stories controller and top stories view. All right, now that we've got that set up, we're going to move on to the next video, and we're going to be creating a top stories service to connect to the Hacker News API. See you then.